You have come here not by chance, but because a part of you is tired of the invisible war, waged in the silence of your own soul. There is an unspoken exhaustion that runs through the veins of every empath, a weariness that comes not from weakness, but from carrying what does not belong to you. The empath's journey is a pilgrimage through shadows, through unhealed voices of those who see in you a mirror they can exploit because they cannot bear to see themselves. But I tell you, the moment an empath grows tired, not of love, but of illusion, there is a power released that even the most cunning narcissist cannot comprehend. This power is not aggression, nor revenge, but the raw force of awakening that surges when you stop being the vessel for other people's unconsciousness. You see, the narcissist thrives because the world is full of mirrors that reflect their carefully constructed persona. They survive on projection, on finding the receptive soul who absorbs their pain and confusion, thinking it is theirs to heal. The empath is the perfect mirror, soft enough to reflect the beauty of what is hidden, yet clear enough to hold the darkness without shattering. But when that mirror decides no longer to absorb the fragments of someone else's broken archetype, it transforms into something unyielding. I have often spoken of the shadow, the repressed, rejected part of the psyche that we do not wish to confront. The narcissist is ruled by an inflated persona that denies its shadow, while the empath often identifies so strongly with the collective pain of others that they forget their own shadow is quietly waiting to be seen. A fed-up empath, however, is not merely someone who has had enough. This is a soul who has descended into the underworld of feeling, who has been the silent healer, the dreamer, the one who senses the unspoken wounds of everyone around them. But when that empath says, "No more," it is as though they have turned inward to claim their archetypal power, the power of the self. The self is the unifying principle of the psyche, the force that integrates shadow and light. When you awaken to this center, you realize that you were never meant to carry the pain of others as your own, but to illuminate it, to reflect it back so they may see themselves. This is why the fed-up empath becomes untouchable, because they stop bleeding into every wound that demands attention. And instead, they become the surgeon who knows precisely where to cut, where to heal, and when to walk away. I have seen in my work that empaths often live through dreams that do not belong to them. They dream the pain of their partners, the fear of their families, the brokenness of strangers. It is as though the collective unconscious pours itself into their nervous system. But dreams, you must remember, are symbolic. When an empath dreams of drowning, it is often not their own waters, but the emotional tides of someone who is unable to swim. When they dream of houses burning, it is the repressed anger of another seeking a vessel to release its fire. Yet, when the empath awakens, when they realize they are not here to carry these projections, but to transmute them, they begin to dream differently. They dream of doors they had not seen before. They dream of standing in the fire but not being burned. And in this transformation, the narcissist loses their power, because a narcissist can only control what is unconscious in you. Do you know what the narcissist fears most? It is not confrontation, it is not anger, It is the silent clarity of a soul who refuses to play their game. An empath who is awakened to their own shadow can no longer be manipulated by the wounded child hidden behind the narcissist's mask. The empath sees that the narcissist's cruelty is not strength but terror, the terror of being unseen, of being small, of facing the void within. A fed-up empath stops feeding that terror. They stop cushioning every sharp edge. They stop twisting themselves into shapes that appease a false god of ego. And when they do, something extraordinary happens. They become mirrors that reflect truth so vividly that the narcissist is forced to confront what they have always avoided. I have often said that the path of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires that we confront the monsters in our own unconscious. But for the empath, individuation begins the day they stop confusing love with sacrifice. True love, the kind that heals, is never about dissolving yourself to save another. It is about standing so firmly in your own soul that your light reveals the shadows around you, without being consumed by them. This is what it means to awaken. It is not a dramatic rebellion, but a quiet reclamation. The empath who has awakened does not scream at the narcissist or seek revenge. They simply stop feeding the beast. They stop being the eternal giver. They stop allowing someone else's shadow to dictate their own worth. There is a dream. I once analyzed a woman standing in a hallway of mirrors, each one showing a different version of herself. In one, she was broken and crying. In another, she was angry and powerful. In another, she was a child, reaching for something she could not name. As she walked through the mirrors, she realized that none of these reflections were entirely her. They were fragments, pieces shaped by what others projected onto her. But at the end of the hallway, there was a mirror with no reflection at all, just light, infinite and blinding. This is the mirror of the self. This is what the fed-up empath finds when they step beyond the endless reflections of others' pain. They find the light that cannot be defined, the power that does not need approval or validation. And in that moment, every narcissist, every manipulator, every shadow that once clung to them simply dissolves, because there is nothing left to feed on. You must understand that power is not in domination, nor is it in submission. Power, in the Jungian sense, is in integration. The empath who integrates their own shadow is more powerful than any narcissist, because they see through the game. They see that the narcissist's grandeur is hollow, that their cruelty is a mask, that their need for control is a desperate attempt to avoid their own emptiness. The fed-up empath no longer tries to fill that emptiness. They allow it to be what it is. And in doing so, they free themselves. When you feel the weight of everyone's expectations, everyone's unspoken wounds pressing on you, I want you to ask yourself, whose burden am I carrying? Whose voice is speaking through me when I say I am not enough? The empath's deepest wound is often this false belief that they are only valuable when they are giving, fixing, absorbing. But the truth is, the empath's gift was never to carry the pain, but to reveal it, to hold up the lantern so that others may see their own shadows. When you awaken to this truth, when you stop carrying what is not yours, you become a force of clarity. And clarity is terrifying to those who live in illusion. The narcissist thrives in confusion, in making you question your own reality. But once you know yourself, once you have stood in the center of your own being, their tactics lose all power. They can no longer gaslight you because you no longer seek their version of truth. You carry your own. You see, individuation is the act of becoming whole, of uniting the conscious and unconscious parts of yourself. A fed-up empath has already walked the dark corridors of the soul. They have faced pain so raw that most people would turn away. And from that descent, they rise not with bitterness, but with an unshakable sense of self. This is why they are more powerful than any narcissist, because they have nothing left to prove, nothing left to lose. The moment an empath steps into this clarity, a strange silence emerges within them. It is not the silence of withdrawal or defeat, but the silence of a deep inner knowing. It is as if their soul has finally stopped negotiating with the world. They no longer need to explain their boundaries, no longer seek to justify why they feel so deeply, or why they can no longer play the role that others assign to them. This silence is the birth of true power. It is the moment when the empath stops being an endless well of sympathy and instead becomes a conscious vessel of discernment. They know what is theirs and what is not. They can feel the invisible threads of manipulation as easily as they can feel the warmth of genuine connection. And in this discernment, the narcissist's power dissolves like mist under the rising sun. The narcissist cannot thrive where there is clarity, because their power depends entirely on confusion and emotional entanglement. When you are confused, when you are unsure of your own worth, you become susceptible to the projections of others. You start to believe that their cruelty is a form of truth, that their approval defines your value. But the fed-up empath no longer dances with confusion. They have walked through fire, through years of unspoken sacrifice, through nights of crying for reasons they cannot explain. And in that fire, they have burned away every illusion that said their purpose was to fix everyone else. They realize now that their purpose was never to heal the narcissist, never to make themselves small so someone else could feel big. Their purpose was to awaken to themselves. I often speak of archetypes, for they are the timeless patterns that shape the human soul. The empath is the healer archetype in its highest form. But when wounded, this healer becomes the martyr, sacrificing itself for causes that are not theirs to bear. The narcissist, on the other hand, embodies the ruler archetype, gone mad, an egoic king or queen who demands worship, not out of strength, but out of deep inner fragmentation. When the empath awakens, these archetypes begin to shift. The healer sheds its martyrdom and becomes the sage, wise and unshakable. The narcissist, stripped of its feeding ground, is forced to confront the emptiness behind the throne. You may think of the empath as water, soft, flowing, endlessly adaptive, and indeed, for most of their lives, empaths have been rivers, bending around every rock, every obstacle, soothing and nourishing those who are thirsty. But when water becomes still, when it becomes an ocean reflecting the sky, there is a depth that cannot be moved. This is the power of the fed-up empath. They are no longer running to every broken cup to pour themselves out. They have become the ocean itself, vast and untouchable. They no longer fear saying no, because they understand that no is not rejection, it is protection. It is the voice of the soul declaring its boundaries, its sacred space. There is something profoundly mystical about the shift. It is as if the empath finally calls back all the pieces of themselves they left scattered in other people's storms. They gather their own energy, their own dreams, their own voice, and it becomes like a shield of light. No narcissist, no manipulator, no dark archetype can stand in front of someone who has reclaimed their wholeness. Because wholeness, once found, is the most terrifying and liberating force in the world. It cannot be bought, it cannot be coerced, it cannot be destroyed. When I have worked with individuals who carry this empathic wound, I often see a recurring dream, the dream of being in a house that is crumbling, yet they continue trying to fix it, patching walls, holding beams, saving it from collapse. This house, of course, is not theirs. It is a psyche of someone else, someone they love, or someone who has demanded their devotion. And they wake exhausted, as if they had spent the night holding up the walls of the world. But when the empath awakens, the dream changes. They step out of that house. They see that the collapse is not their failure, but the necessary falling of something false. They walk into the open fields of their own psyche and see the stars for the first time. And with this vision comes the power to build something true. A narcissist, by contrast, is terrified of collapse. Their entire existence is built on the scaffolding of persona, a mask they show to the world while hiding the chaos underneath. They need constant validation because the mask is fragile. They need constant admiration because beneath it lies a profound sense of unworthiness. This is why the narcissist attacks the empath. They see in the empath's depth something they cannot touch. They sense the well of feeling, of compassion, of authenticity. And it both attracts and repels them. But when the empath stops giving freely, when they withdraw that unconditional stream of validation, the narcissist's false structure begins to tremble. The empath becomes not just a mirror, but a revelation. There is a profound liberation in understanding that you are never here to save anyone. This may sound harsh to the empath who has built their identity on saving and healing, but saving others often becomes a distraction from facing one's own shadow. When you stop pouring yourself out for everyone else, you finally have the energy to look inward to see where your own wounds are calling for attention. And in this self-inquiry, in this confrontation with your own shadow, you find a depth of strength that no one can take from you. The narcissist no longer matters. Their games, their tactics, their illusions, they dissolve in the light of your self-awareness. Imagine standing in front of a storm. The narcissist is that storm, chaotic, loud, demanding your attention. The empath's instinct is to build walls, to hold umbrellas, to shield everyone from the rain. But what happens when you simply stand, unafraid, and let the storm rage without trying to control it? You realize that the storm is just wind and water. It cannot break you unless you open yourself to it. A fed-up empath understands this, they stop trying to calm the storm and simply let it pass. And when the storm sees that it cannot provoke a reaction, it loses its power. I often think of the myth of Persephone, the goddess, who was taken into the underworld, who had to descend into darkness before she could rise as queen. The empath journey is similar. They are taken into the emotional underworld of others, feeling their pain, their sorrow, their rage. But when they emerge, they do not come out the same. They come out crowned. They come out sovereign. A fed-up empath is a Persephone who no longer fears the shadows because they have walked among them and survived. The narcissist cannot follow you into this sovereignty. They may try to lure you back with guilt, with anger, with manipulation. But once you have tasted the clarity of your own soul, those tactics feel like dust in your hands. You see, the narcissist not as a villain, but as a wounded archetype, a child lost in the labyrinth of their own unacknowledged shadow. You may even feel compassion for them. But it is a compassion that does not consume you. It is a compassion that allows you to say, this is not my path. I will not carry what is yours. This is the final liberation of the empath. The world needs empaths who are fed up not with love, but with illusions, because these empaths become truth bearers. They become the ones who stand in their light so fiercely that others are forced to see their own shadows. And this is how transformation begins. It does not begin with rescuing. It begins with being a fed-up empath is not a savior. They are a mirror of truth. And in that mirror, the narcissist, the manipulator of the lost soul, they all see themselves as they truly are. Whether they choose to heal is no longer your burden. I want you to feel this truth in your bones. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are not broken because you care. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a gift, one that becomes unshakable when you learn where to place it. Stop scattering your light in places where it is devoured. Stop believing that love means emptying yourself to fill someone else's void. Love is not depletion. Love is the quiet power of standing whole and saying, I see you, but I will not lose myself in you. There comes a time in every empath's journey when they must confront the truth that their greatest strength is also their greatest test. To feel so deeply is both a blessing and a burden. It allows you to touch the souls of others, to sense what remains hidden. But it can also pull you into the undercurrents of pain that were never meant to be yours. When you finally grow tired of this, when you reach that moment of quiet rebellion where you say, no more, you are not becoming cold. You are becoming whole. This is what the narcissist will never understand. They will see your boundaries as defiance, your silence as rejection. But in truth, it is the birth of your true power. The narcissist depends on your unawareness. They thrive when you do not know where your boundaries end and theirs begin. They thrive when you confuse empathy with submission. When you mistake compassion for compliance, but when you awaken to the difference, when you realize that true compassion is not about losing yourself, but about standing firmly in who you are, the game changes entirely. You stop being the open wound they can feed on. You become something else, something they cannot name or control. You become an archetype they cannot manipulate the awakened empath. To be awakened in this sense means that you no longer seek validation from the narcissist's distorted reflection. You see their grandiosity for what it is, a mask hiding terror, a desperate attempt to avoid the abyss within, but you also see your own patterns. The places where you have been complicit in the dance. This is not about blame, it is about awareness, for the empath's shadow is not cruelty or arrogance, it is self-forgetting. It is the unconscious belief that your worth is measured by how much you give, how much you endure, how much pain you can absorb without breaking. When you finally see this shadow and bring it into the light, you reclaim a part of yourself that was never weak, but only waiting. This reclamation often feels like a storm inside you. At first, you may feel guilt. You may feel that saying no is selfish, that walking away is cruel. But these feelings are not your soul speaking. They are the echoes of conditioning, of years spent trying to be everything for everyone. When you stand firm, when you refuse to be drained, you will feel the resistance of those who depended on your silence. Yet this resistance is not a sign that you are wrong, it is a sign that you are breaking an old pattern. Every empath must pass through this fire, the fire of knowing they cannot heal by being consumed. I have seen in countless dreams how this moment manifests. A woman dreams of holding a bird with broken wings, feeding it, nursing it back to health, but the bird never flies. It grows heavier, larger, until it is no longer a bird, but a creature that demands her entire strength just to hold. In the dream, she realizes she has forgotten her own wings. The moment she lets the creature go, not out of hatred, but out of love for herself, she remembers she can fly. This is what it means to be fed up. It is not anger for the sake of anger. It is the moment when you recognize that your life is also sacred, that your energy is not an endless well for those who refuse to heal themselves. The narcissists cannot comprehend this sacredness because they are trapped in their own reflection. They are like Narcissus in the ancient myth, staring at the water, in love with an image that can never love them back. They demand your energy because they cannot create their own. But a fed-up empath no longer offers that energy freely. They no longer play the part of the water. They step back and let the narcissist face their own emptiness. And in doing so, they become not just free, but powerful. For true power is not in control over others. It is in control over yourself, your energy, your boundaries, your sense of worth. This transformation is deeply archetypal. It is the shift from the archetype of the caregiver to the archetype of the sovereign. The sovereign does not abandon compassion, but they know that their compassion must first include themselves. They know that boundaries are not walls, but sacred lines of energy. Lines that say, this is where I end and you begin. I will not let your shadow become my prison. A narcissist cannot enter this sacred space because they cannot manipulate someone who knows who they are. When the empath stands as sovereign, they are like a mountain. They do not chase storms. They let storms pass over them. They remain rooted, unmoved, untouchable. What is perhaps most mystical about this transformation is how the world begins to respond. Once you stop pouring your energy into those who drain you, something remarkable happens. You begin to attract those who are whole, those who give as much as they receive. Your relationships shift. Your inner circle transforms. The narcissist may rage may lash out, may attempt to guilt you back into their web, but they cannot hold you anymore, because your soul has chosen freedom, and freedom is magnetic. It draws to you the people and the experiences that reflect your true nature, not your wounded one. This is why I say that the fed-up empath is more powerful than any narcissist ever realized. Because the empath's power is not born of force, but of presence. It is not born of domination, but of clarity. When you no longer need to save, to prove, to earn love by sacrificing yourself, you become radiant. You become the embodiment of the self, the unifying force that stands at the center of the psyche. This is the archetype that every narcissist secretly fears, because the self is the death of illusion. The self is the light that reveals the cracks in the mask. It is the mirror that cannot be broken because it does not reflect the persona. It reflects the truth. There is a story, perhaps mythic, perhaps symbolic, of a woman who spent her life healing others. She was kind, endlessly giving, but always exhausted. One day, she met an old sage who told her, "Your hands are open, but your soul is empty. You pour from a cup that is dry." The woman asked, "How do I fill it?" The sage replied, "Stop pouring for those who will not drink. Let your hands rest. The well within you will rise again." This is the lesson of the fed-up empath. It is not to close your heart, but to stop wasting its waters where they are swallowed by the desert of ego. The narcissist does not understand this lesson. They see only the surface of things, the dance of control and validation. But an awakened empath dances no longer. They move in stillness. They speak with the quiet authority of someone who has been to the depths and returned. And when they look into the narcissist's eyes, they see not a monster, but a broken soul. They may offer compassion, but they do not offer themselves as a sacrifice. They know that true healing is not about being consumed. It is about shining so brightly that others are forced to see their own darkness. Whether they accept this light is not your burden to carry. When you stop giving your power away, something extraordinary happens. Your energy begins to return to you in waves. The fatigue that once haunted you begins to fade. The confusion that once clouded you begins to clear. You feel stronger, not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You are no longer chasing the impossible dream of making someone whole when they refuse to look within. You stand now as a witness, not as a savior. And in this witnessing, you discover that you were never powerless. You were simply tired of being everything for everyone. The empath's true gift is not in giving endlessly, but in seeing deeply. It is in their ability to see the archetypal patterns that govern human behavior, to understand the silent stories behind every mask. When you stop drowning in these stories, when you stop confusing them with your own, you become a guide, not a hostage. You become the one who can say, "I see you, I understand you, but I do not belong to your chaos." This statement, this clarity, is what breaks every chain. The empath who has reached this point of awakening walks through the world with a presence that is both calm and unshakable. It is as though every cell of their being has remembered its rightful place. Every fragment of their soul has returned home. they are no longer at war with themselves. No longer do they feel the need to be understood or to explain why they feel what they feel. They understand now that the sensitivity is not a flaw, but a language of the soul, a language that speaks in symbols, in dreams, in archetypes that reveal the unseen currents of life. And it is precisely because of this deep inner knowing that they are no longer vulnerable to those who thrive on control and confusion. A narcissist cannot manipulate someone who is rooted in their own truth. They can shout, they can project, they can twist stories into endless spirals, but their words hit like arrows against the shield of light. A fed-up empath does not defend themselves with anger, but with clarity. They no longer need to fight because they see through the illusion. The narcissist's accusations, the gaslighting, their endless attempts to dominate, are revealed for what they are: expressions of a deep, unhealed shadow. And the empath, rather than engaging in that shadow, stands apart. They do not hate, for hate would only bind them to the same energy. Instead, they simply do not allow it to enter. This refusal is powerful because it is quiet. It is not a dramatic rebellion, but a steady reclaiming of self. The empath does not need to scream, "I am done," they simply embody it. Their silence is no longer submission, but sovereignty. It is the kind of silence that makes the narcissist uneasy, because it cannot be provoked. It is the silence of a mountain that will not move no matter how hard the storm rages around it. The narcissist who thrives on reaction suddenly has nothing to feed on. They are left staring into the void of their own reflection. And for the first time, they are forced to confront it. You, as an empath, may feel that walking away or setting boundaries is cruel. But I tell you, it is not cruelty. It is truth. There is no greater act of love than to refuse to enable someone's self-destruction. The narcissist will not see it this way, at least not at first. They will call you selfish, cold, ungrateful. They will project every ounce of their own pain onto you. But this is because they cannot yet face themselves. Your refusal to carry their burden is like a mirror they do not want to look into, yet whether they see it or not, you have already shifted the energy. You have stopped the cycle, and this, more than anything, is the beginning of your freedom. Freedom is not a loud declaration. It is not a sudden break or an explosion of emotion. Freedom is the quiet realization that you are no longer waiting for someone else to see you. It is the deep breath you take when you realize that your worth was never dependent on their approval. It is the lightness that comes when you no longer feel the need to prove, to justify, to fix. You are not here to fix anyone. You are here to live fully, to embody your own wholeness, to let your life become a reflection of the self. And when you do this, if you inspire others not through sacrifice, but through authenticity, the fed-up empath does not stop feeling. In fact, they feel more deeply than ever before, but now their feelings are rooted in wisdom rather than confusion. They know when a feeling belongs to them and when it belongs to someone else. They no longer carry every sorrow as if it were their own. They allow others the dignity of their own path, the freedom to face their own shadows, And in doing so, they become a lighthouse, they shine, but they do not chase ships. They do not beg to be seen. They simply stand, radiating light, and those who are ready find them. It is in this state of being that the empath becomes truly powerful. Not the kind of power that dominates or controls, but the power that transforms simply by existing. The narcissist, who once seemed so formidable, is revealed to be fragile. In comparison, their power was always borrowed from the energy of others, borrowed from the illusions they could create. But the empath's power is not borrowed. It comes from within. It comes from the deep well of the soul, the place where the conscious and unconscious meet, the place Jung called the self. This power cannot be taken because it does not depend on external validation. It is self-generating, like a flame that feeds on its own clarity. I have seen people ask, how do I stop attracting narcissists? The answer is not in changing the world around you, but in changing the energy within you. When you stop leaking your power, when you stop mistaking self-sacrifice for love, you no longer resonate with those who would take advantage. It is not that narcissists disappear. They will always exist, as will all shadows, but they no longer find an entry point into your soul. They may approach, but they cannot stay. You have become the guardian of your own temple, and only those who honor it can enter. There is an archetype in every myth that represents this moment of transformation. The warrior who lays down their sword, not because they are defeated, but because they realize their strength is not in fighting, but in knowing. The hermit who emerges from the cave, not broken, but carrying a lantern of wisdom. The phoenix, rising not in rage, but in quiet inevitability, having burned away everything that no longer serves. The fed-up empath is all of these archetypes at once. They are the healer who has healed themselves, the mirror that no longer distorts, the soul that knows its own depth. And what happens when you live from this place? Your life begins to change in ways that feel both subtle and profound. You find that you no longer tolerate the small manipulations, the subtle energy drains that once went unnoticed. You begin to speak differently, not louder, but with more certainty. Your words carry weight because they come from a place of alignment. People may notice a change in you, though they cannot always name it. Some will be drawn to it. Others will feel threatened by it, but it does not matter, because you are no longer living for their approval. You are living for the truth that burns quietly in your own heart. The narcissist, if they remain in your life, may try one last time to test your boundaries. They may push, provoke, seek cracks in your armor, but they will find none. Not because you have hardened, but because you have become transparent. There is nothing for them to grab onto. You are no longer playing the game of roles and masks. You have stepped out of the theater altogether. And when you do, the narcissist is left performing to an empty audience, their power dissolving into the void. The final stage of the empath's awakening is not anger or bitterness. It is compassion, but a different kind of compassion than before. It is not the compassion that says, I will carry you. It is the compassion that says, I see you, but I trust you to carry yourself. It is a compassion that is fierce, clear, and unyielding. It does not mean letting people harm you. It means recognizing that their path is their own, just as yours is your own. You can love them from a distance. You can forgive them without allowing them back into your sacred space. This is what true healing looks like. It is not about fixing the narcissist. It is about reclaiming yourself. And so I leave you with this truth. The moment you become fed up, the moment you refuse to be drained, you awaken a power that has always been inside you. This power is not loud or boastful. It does not need to announce itself. It simply exists, steady and unshakable, like a flame that no storm can extinguish. You are no longer a mirror for the narcissist's illusions. You are the mirror of truth, and in that truth lies a freedom that cannot be taken away. You, who have felt too much, who have given too much, who have carried the weight of others' shadows, you are not weak. You are the quiet storm, the hidden strength, the one who rises when everyone expects you to fall. You are the empath who has awakened, and that is why you are more powerful than any narcissist ever realized. Not because you have conquered them, but because you have conquered the part of yourself that once believed you had to give everything away to be worthy. Now you are whole, and wholeness is power.